What up, you fine folks? This is the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Each and every show, we talk to the experts and get their expert advice on the ever-changing digital social marketing landscape. And this show is no different. Episode number 80. As I always bring in producer Will. Episode 80, my friend. This is finally getting to some nice numbers when we talk athletes. It was pretty rough there for, about 20 episodes or so. So we're getting back to the promised land.
Yeah, the 60s and 70s are rough, but greener pastures.
I'd rather not talk about those days. I'm thinking Jerry Rice at the top of my head, but a lot of wide receivers. Is Steve Largent at 80? I don't know, but a lot of Hall of Fame wide receivers were 80, I think.
Yeah, the only other one I think who's worthy for sure is Chris Carter, CC. Yeah. But, hard not to go with the GOAT, Jerry Rice.
All right, let's go with the GOAT, Jerry Rice. Of course, GOAT Energy. He owns that company. We know them well. They're the official energy drink of the LA Lakers, if you didn't know that, Will. So we'll have to go with our guy, Jerry Rice. Okay, so we are going to talk to Zack Honarvar. He is the founder and CEO of One Day Entertainment and Creator Now. One Day Entertainment works with creators, influencers to help them really create businesses. As he says, these people don't need managers; they need CEOs. They need to create their brand like a startup company, since they have such an amazing reach and such an amazing opportunity to capitalize or monetize on that opportunity. So he works directly with brands that you may know, like Yes Theory, that just do a really good job of partnering and being authentic with their audience with brands. I know so many of my, our clients so many of the people in the space are like, how do I use influencers? How do I extend my messaging? How do I get outside my organic owned and operated channels? And I really want to ask him best practices, what he's seen, where the undervalued attention is. And Will, I know you spoke to him a little bit in the pre-interview, but it just should be an overall good show to dig deeper on the creator lane.
Yeah, super smart guy. And I think, like you said, we do get those questions a lot of like, I'm a brand that has no money. I'm a brand that has a ton of money.
Yes.
Like, what do you recommend that I do? And I think Zack has answers to all those questions.
All right, let's dig into it. Zack Honarvar, founder, CEO of One Day Entertainment and Creator Now. All right, he is the founder and CEO of One Day Entertainment and Creator Now. Zack Honarvar joins us right here on the Business Social. Zack, thanks so much for the time, man. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's dive in, man. So I would love for you to start things off with just let the listeners know a little bit about what your day-to-day is and what you oversee over at One Day and Creator Now.
Sure. So One Day Entertainment is a management company that works with a small handful of creators like Eric, the Cheeky Boyos, and Yes Theory. Our philosophy in management has always been to help creators build businesses outside of their channels. So my day-to-day is like envisioning what creators can start with businesses that can be launched to their audience, but eventually grow outside of their content and their sphere of demographic, and hopefully live forever and that they own equity in. And then Creator Now is a program that actually started kind of like that with one of the creators I work with, Eric, and is a creator education platform targeted towards up and coming creators who want to make YouTube and content creation their full-time careers. And so we help them go through that learning process in a very hands-on, action-oriented manner, where they go through a live experience, get hands-on training with brand partnerships, video creation, as well as go through a whole curriculum of how to go from making videos alone in your bedroom to meeting other people doing it, collaborate with others, learn the skill set, and turn it into a full-time career.
Awesome. I love that. I love to dig into more on both topics. So I'll give you a warm-up question just to warm you up here. Totally unrelated. If Zack, if you had your own late night show, who would be your first guest?
Has to be alive, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
If I had a late night show and I had my own guest, that's a hell of a question to as a warm-up. That's like dunking on my first.
Yeah, exactly. It's less a warm-up, more put you on the spot. There you go.
I would say one of the first ones that come to mind is like to keep it creator oriented is like Casey Neistat.
Yeah, he's great.
I would say there's so many questions I have for him, and just his experience I consider him like the godfather of YouTube.
Yeah.
Might as well be the founder. As far as I'm concerned. And so I think there's so many questions I have for him, seeing it from such an infancy of daily vlogging when he started into what it's become today, and still being such an active member of the community, an investor and creator now. And so that is one of the names that come to mind.
He's out in LA, man, so that we can make this happen if you start your own late night show, maybe. Let's do it. Well, yeah, I would love to dig more. I mean, so many questions I get with clients and colleagues are about how to leverage influencers, how to get more distribution for your content, how to be more authentic and genuine when you're trying to get your message out there outside of your owned and operated platform. So I would love for you, I know you looking at some of your content and look at some of your interviews, you really believe that creators and artists should be treated really more like a startup company or their own entrepreneurs, like you said earlier, opposed to just influencers. Can you walk me through what the difference is in your opinion and why there should be kind of a culture shift there?
Yeah, I think for a long time, influencers just had a very I think people wrote them off as second class celebrities and thought of them as only being able to promote products for a very like short term cause that was very like transactional.
For fit tea,
for detox tea brands on Instagram. And I think one of the things I started realizing is that there are a lot of like niche communities that follow particular creators because they're thought leaders in spaces where it just doesn't make sense to cover that on some of the broad outlets and publications that I think when we were in a larger time of like conglomerate media was talking about. And so if you're really passionate about biohacking as it comes to cold therapy or cold exposure, you're not going to get that on Men's Health that much. You might see one article every 6 months, but there's a micro creator out there who's talking about it every single day.
Your boy Wim Hof, maybe.
Exactly. Wim Hof is a great example. And so I think that there's that was really something there that I noticed. And I think things were going more and more niche. And I think creators are kind of pushing that and fitting into those gaps in ways that traditional media never could. And so that was what initially created that. And I started realizing that the way that the money flows in the industry was very much helping these creators gain cash flow through these transactional deals. And I thought that was going to switch over to, equity through ownership of business, which I think we're starting to see more and more of now. So that was where the management companies started.
You mentioned Casey Neistat. I mean, I actually worked with him at the Billboard Music Awards back in 2015 as an influencer. We actually reached out to him to, talk about the Billboard Music Awards. And to your point, look what he's done. He started off as an influencer, just a daily vlogger, and he's now a business person. He's launched companies. I do think, no different than when Michael Jordan was the, brand lead for Nike and how that transitioned that entire company from A to Z. I just think maybe early on, because people, as they did for so long, shit on social media and or didn't know what it meant, they put these people, those are just influencers, those are lame. But now that we're sitting here in 2022, these are actual businesses, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's still only the tip of the iceberg for a lot of this. And I don't necessarily think that my philosophy is that every creator necessarily needs to start like their own owned and operated business. I don't think that entrepreneurial desire needs to be in every single person. And starting your own business, like, Feastables with Mr. Beast or Beast Burger or Prime with Logan Paul and KSI, like those are huge, massive undertakings. Happy Dad Seltzer is nationally distributed across Canada and the USA. Like that's a massive undertaking and requires a team and a lot of thinking.
The Joe Rogan podcast gets 10 times more viewers than CNN. So that's not just a dude doing a podcast in his second bedroom. To your point, it's definitely more of a business. So let's get like super micro, I guess, with it and talk about just because you're in this space every single day and you've seen the good, bad, and the ugly. But again, brands, I've seen it in 3 different buckets, right? You want to grow your audience, grow your affinity. You can use paid media. You can use influencers in your network to distribute, or you can do giveaways, stuff like that to just extend your message outside of your organic reach. Let's talk about just some basic influencers, do's and don'ts. If you're a brand, you find an influencer that really can speak to your current community and or just the demographic you're trying to reach, what are some things that you should make sure you check off before you enter into that?
I actually don't think that list is very long. Like I think the main thing is like shut up and listen if you're a brand. There are a lot of brands that approach a creator, or if you want to call them an influencer, with like a predetermined video creative idea or concept. Hey, I've watched 2 of your videos. I thought it'd be so cool if your next one was this. I've seen this with a lot of the creators I work with, where one video would necessarily do commercially really well, get a ton of viewership, and a bunch of brands would come in and be like, we want you to do that, but at the end, just reveal it with our product, or like that we were also behind the twist with you. And it's like, well, we just did that video. Why would we do it again?
Right,
But
right.
you want us to do it again because it did really well, like in terms of viewership, and you just want to be part of the part two.
Yeah.
Instead of believing that a creator can actually come up with a new innovative idea and trusting them to do that in a way that showcases your product. I always like saying, you know, a CMO of a Fortune 500 company gets a raise if they come up with one really good idea a year. But these creators are like
once a day,
making banger videos once a day, once a week. Like that's their job. Like these are some of the best marketing minds in the world.
That's a great point.
Especially when they're doing it at that top echelon of YouTube. So I think brands should trust them to put on a marketing hat and actually showcase their brand in an innovative way that speaks directly to their audience.
Yeah, and you know, I'm a Laker fan. Hopefully you are as well out there in LA. But I follow Anthony Davis, and he has a partner with Ruffles Chips, and it's awful. Just bad content, very salesy, not original. And you know, as a fan, I think we have to understand how smart fans are. They know when something's inauthentic or ingenuine, or someone's just kind of hawking a product in an inauthentic way. So I totally agree there. You know, let the influencer do what they do best, which is they know their audience more than anybody. They're checking the data. We had a former guest on the show. Like these folks are looking at the data of every single piece of content by the hour. They know what works with their audience. So trust the producer of that audience in a sense. What have been, I mean, obviously some of the creators that you work with, but what are some examples in the space that you've seen, whether good or bad, of just different case studies we could either strive for or maybe stay away from?
Good question. I would say one example that I was part of that I think went really well was Yes Theory did a partnership with Google Search. And when that opportunity first came into our inbox, it was like, wait, Google Search does marketing? Like we thought everyone already knows what Google Search was, but we started to learn more from the Google team. And I think one of the things that the Google team did really well was like actually start teaching our entire like Yes Theory team like about what they were going through as a business and the things that Google Search cares about and how, you know, they want to build more trust with their target audience and et cetera. And so educating the creator on what you're thinking about as a brand is a really great way to start, because now you're actually letting them know what priorities and metrics you're trying to hit and what good performance looks like and why. And so that starting was really good. Next, they were very open to us being innovative with the type of video that we would make that would showcase their product. And obviously Google Search is a very interesting product to try to integrate into especially Yes Theory being travel content. So Amar and Kate from my team and Amar, one of the Yes Theory members, were the leading minds in like being able to come up with the idea of like telling a story through screens, telling Amar's life story through screens. And one of the interesting things was Amar had the incredible idea of like, one of the first things that got me to realize that life in my small town in Egypt wasn't all there was in the world, and there were possibilities outside of my small town, was the expansive knowledge that Google Search had. And so like, wow, let's start there as like what really showed me what the rest of my life would look like. And it basically, the video ended up becoming a short film instead of a video, a short film that was about Amar's whole life told solely through screens. There was actually nothing shot. It was completely like, and one of the things that made it also very great was Google's team was very accommodating to different things that were hard to make structurally. So for example, we had to recreate the YouTube interface as 2005 because we couldn't just go rip it from YouTube. We had to go find out what did the interface look like so we can accurately show like.
Can you find that on the Wayback Machine? I don't know. Maybe
you can, but then the thing is like you can't show YouTube branding. You can't show Facebook branding because it's a license or it's a commercialized video.
Got it.
And so you had to make it look slightly similar, but not similar enough that it would be infringement. And so it was also really great collaboration with Google, who is both like also just, again, I think the brand just needs to do a really good job teaching creators, hey, here's why we can't use Facebook IP in our branded video, and doing that in a way where they're actually educating the creator rather than just like throwing red tape all over their video.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's just a cool way to do it because it's a piece of I always say this, that content works with their audience no matter what, whether Google Search was part of it or not. It's actually a very awesome piece of content. And going back to Casey Neistat, that just kind of popped up was he was working with Samsung. So you probably remember this. He rented out a mall that was no longer there essentially, and created a winter wonderland during Christmas and invited the Boys and Girls Club. That story, it was all shot on Samsung phones. So, but the story itself, anybody can watch, and it's a tearjerker and all those different things. But by the way, this brand is actually a part of this awesome opportunity. So I totally agree with that. You also say creators should focus on growing engagement with their existing audience versus attracting new fans or followers. Explain that.
Yeah. So I have a ton of more up and coming early stage creators chat with me and say like, Zach, I want to grow my channel. I want to try to make this a full-time career. Like, what should I do? I'm at, just use a random number. Like I have 5,000 subscribers. Right. I get 5,000 listeners on each podcast that I'm doing, but I want to get that number to 50,000 so that this can be my full-time career. I can start getting ad slots and so on and so forth.
Vanity metrics.
And to some degree they hold weight, right? Because if you do get to 50, then you can sell ad slots to a degree that like you can make full-time income. And then everyone's just trying to get to the point where they can leave the job or the thing that they don't like doing so that they can focus full-time on their craft. And I think the mindset is, okay, I have 5,000. How do I get 45,000 more? Right? Like, okay, I got to go look outside of this 5,000 to go find more. But I don't think people realize, instead of thinking about 45,000 more, how do you actually think about how to turn those 5,000 people into the most diehard fans possible, so that they're the ones helping you get 45,000.
And I think if you look at it from the former rather than the latter, you might sell your soul just to get the 40,000, turn off your entire diehard audience, and now you have a bunch of people that kind of like you but aren't too into you.
Exactly. And I think one of the pitfalls a lot of creators sometimes fall into when they go too far down that road is that they get to the 50,000 subscribers or followers or whatever have you, but then none of those people are willing to buy any merch. None of those people are willing to click any of the links of the brand partnerships that they endorse, because there's no trust. They're very superficial follows or subscribers. And so because there's no trust established, all those things that they thought would come down the road in terms of brand partnerships and merch sales or other forms of like business creation can't actually take place because the engagement metric was very low.
Well, I can tell you too, just working with a ton of Fortune 1,000 brands, Fortune 500 brands, the C-suite still cares because they don't know anything else about social other than the vanity metrics. And that's just it's a tough tug of war we constantly have to play. Cause I'm just like you, man. I'm screaming from the rooftops like, hey, if we focus on engagement, the rest will take care of itself. And, if you want to use paid media or what have you, or a huge giveaway, that's fine. But the attrition of that audience and the audience is not as diehard, like you said. So if you focus on the engagement, it may take longer, but it definitely ends up being the best recipe for success. You also talk about things like handwritten notes and making those one-on-one connections where at scale, you think that wouldn't make sense to go from 5,000 to, 50,000. But taking the time out to do those one-to-one connections can actually end up giving you amazing results.
Yeah, I think I actually learned this more from tech. Like I remember hearing that the Airbnb founders in the early stages of Airbnb were offering to take free photos of people's homes when they wanted to put the homes and offer them on Airbnb. And so the principle there is do things that don't scale. And do them until they don't scale, and then you can stop doing them. But if you don't do them when you can do them, then when you get too big, it's too late. And so at those early stages, it's really the time where you can, right? Like if you have 5,000 followers or subscribers, you can, say like, hey guys, I want to write everyone Christmas cards, buy them for $10. I'll give all the proceeds to this Christmas bank. And then I'm going to like write handwritten notes. And then everyone gets this very personalized way to feel connected to you. I remember when I was a kid, I'm actually a Raptors fan because I'm from Toronto, but I remember I went to a Raptors game because a Raptor picked me on Twitter because I answered a question really quickly and he gave me free tickets to the game. His name was Amir Johnson. And I went to the game and Amir Johnson gave me a signed card. And Amir Johnson was never my favorite player, but after that day,
he's your guy.
He's my guy. He still follows me on Twitter to this day. And so that was a very exciting thing that made me feel a connection to him, that made me follow the rest of his career.
And you're talking about it now, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, right. It's just, it increases your messaging. So when someone gets that connection, they tell their friends, tell their family, and all of a sudden, oh, let me check this guy out. Let me follow him too. So cannot agree more. All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the creator now, because you mentioned something earlier when we were talking that, which I really loved, which is you feel like the storytellers of today are kind of the future entrepreneurs and business owners, if you will, where maybe 10 years ago, it was more the software engineers in Silicon Valley and launching these apps. But why do you feel so strongly that that shift is changing and that's where the future is going?
Yeah, it's something I give a lot of thought to. I think, in 2010 was really the start to a lot of like the early app companies that saw a ton of success, like the Airbnbs, the Dropboxes, and being able to code and do software development was like this skill that gave you a ticket to be able to go from 0 to 1 on a product or a tool. And that provided value to a lot of people. And then we saw these incredible companies grow with large valuations and tons of venture interest. And so a ton of money went into that space. And I think that because of that, we also started realizing like higher education wasn't doing a phenomenal job at teaching software engineering skills. And a lot of these people that were starting some of the biggest companies in the world were self-taught or college dropouts that were like doing things on the side for fun, or, like the Steve Jobs that was like pulling apart computers and then putting them back together on his spare time. And, or the Steve Wozniak, so to speak. And so I think now we're starting to see the equivalent with video production and video storytelling, where in the same way, film school isn't really doing the job of being able to equip people with the abilities to tell social media formatted video storytelling. And we're starting to see more and more value put on the ability of a brand to tell their story or engage their audience through video. And that's actually no longer important at all through like TV commercial, and pretty much solely, of value through platforms like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and so on, and Snapchat. So I think that skill set's becoming very important. And you see a lot of direct-to-consumer brands currently outsourcing a lot of their video production capabilities to external agencies. But in the same way that, a lot of these brands at scale can't afford to, it doesn't make sense for a large company to outsource their tech. Early stages, that makes sense. At large scale, that's like a big no-no. No company says like outsource your CTO forever. No, you bring the tech internally, so that's an owned and operated process. And so I think down the road, we're going to start seeing all these companies say, oh, whoa, why is our video storytelling going to an agency that tells the stories for 50 other brands? This is the thing that is talking to our audience and our community. Let's bring this in-house. Okay, who do we hire to bring this in-house? Like a chief storytelling officer. And that person's actually operating a team of production crew, script writers, producers, on camera personality, editors. And that is going to be like the new content department that we're going to start seeing, especially at consumer facing brands.
I'm thinking too, like, one example, I guess, where that could go wrong. If you remember, Pepsi, I think they let go of their agency and they did the famous Kendall Jenner Black Lives Matter ad that went over really poorly. And I think internally, right, like if there's a CEO or CMO at the top that people are scared of, that won't raise their hand like, hey, I'm the junior art director here, but this is really off message and off branding. It's just interesting. Like I love the idea of partners and using outside creators outside of the organization as well, just to make sure that you don't have some blind spots or you're not missing something that maybe the general public will catch on to.
Yeah. And I think there's, I think probably similarly with code, it was like, you find the like very stereotypical hacker who can build anything but doesn't have the same social skills, and companies would then hire that person and say like, oh, well, we'll be okay with the fact that maybe you're lacking some of these areas so that you can build really incredible product. And I think similarly, what now might seem like, oh, crazy creative storyteller that doesn't fit in the structure of a formal company, I think that narrative will change, and people will start to realize that creativity is actually a very rare skill set that needs to actually exist inside of a company.
You hit on something really, really amazing, which I think the speed, right? And if you go to a Pepsi, let's keep using that as an example.
Sure.
Just to change the color of the can takes 19 levels of approval and a 6-month window. they're moving like cruise ships opposed to moving on a dime. And, you and I growing up too, it's like now you have to be able to turn a commercial around in a day sometimes to maximize on the pop culture, maximize on the opportunity or what's happening in the space. So I think the future, like you said, over the next decade, you're going to have to be so much quicker. And these 4-month and 28 meetings in corporate structure, I don't think will work for most brands in order to add mass audience or really make sure you scale properly.
It never has. And to be honest, I think that's, if it did, there wouldn't be a world for entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are able to flourish because that is the case with these larger, more bureaucratic, like yellow tape companies.
Well, I think it did exist before social and new media or Web 2.0 or what have you, because you could have 4 commercials a year. Every quarter you crank out a new commercial for summer, fall, whatever. You have the Coca-Cola polar bears at Christmas. You have the summertime people dancing in the pool, whatever it may be. But now with social and like how fast things move, I feel like you have to have not necessarily a brand spot, but you got to have fresh content all the time.
Well, I think even outside of marketing, right? Like there's very few 100-year companies out there in the world. There's very few 20-year companies out there in the world. The list of the top 100 American companies changes rapidly. Very few companies have been able to have staying power.
Yeah.
And because of that, I actually think it's because people are noticing gaps that larger companies can't go after. Then they go after that gap. The gap expands in market value. And then all of a sudden that becomes a huge business.
Like that one company called Blockbuster. I think they had
I was literally about to say
a little bit of a gap. Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing, and that's what keeps entrepreneurship going, and that's what keeps things interesting, is that there's always these opportunities. Like there's so many things that we look at with YouTube and we say, like, how come YouTube doesn't have a thumbnail optimization tool? That's been something I've been asking for 4 years, and it's because YouTube has problems well beyond a thumbnail optimization tool. But you know what that provides? It provides an opportunity for entrepreneurs like myself, for other people in the creator economy to say, like, I wonder what a thumbnail optimization tool might look like. Let me go build that. And then thumbnail optimization might actually become like a completely viable core product of a larger platform for creators.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I won't ask you this question because I already know the answer in terms of, do you think, not so much creators, but I think celebrities, athletes, I've been talking about this for years, are just not properly monetizing their audience. At the end of the day, you just said it. All advertising is how many eyeballs can you get me? And there's cash exchange for that ability. Now, is it done in an authentic way or inauthentic way? That can be something we can, I guess, be subjective about. But, from a social media standpoint and how large these audiences are for a LeBron James, for an actress, a musician, they're just not properly monetized in the same way maybe creators or influencers are. I think the Kardashians are figured out, but a lot of people that have a lot of followers have not figured it out yet.
Yes. Although I also don't think that not necessarily everyone has to, or that's a bad thing. Like there's probably a lot of like NFL linebackers or safeties that aren't super recognizable by face, and they prefer to keep it that way. And they could go out and like start making content about what it's like to be on the Pittsburgh Steelers, second line. And that would do really well, and that would probably get them a ton of endorsements. But maybe they just don't want that added pressure or time, like work, and they want to just go home to their kids and live a semi-average life where they don't have to worry about like, what's my next upload, or when am I going to get the video out, or oh my God, now people are recognizing me at Dick's Sporting Goods, and I think that that's totally okay too. Although for the people that want to build this into a business, there's a ton of money on the table.
Opportunity. What are your thoughts on Web 3.0? Because I think to that point, I don't even think the social media market, the eyeballs, the audience is being maximized at scale for what you can do. And now here comes NFTs. So you talk about an athlete, a celebrity that hasn't really even tapped into the ability and the reach that they have with their social. And now they can create custom NFTs in a back-end store and blockchain. I mean, that's a whole nother Pandora's box. But where do you think all that's going?
I mean, I'm very bullish on the space. I think we're still incredibly early. It's rather surprising about how to hear how many people think that like this is like go time, because I think it's like very much still learning and development time. And
it's like MySpace top 8 time right now. You're just trying to figure it out, and
and I think anyone who takes a swing at doing anything in this space has to really decide whether or not they're going to be committed to doing this for the next decade or more. I don't think that this is like I can do this, and then maybe I'll pull this project down and then maybe I'll like get out of Web3 for 2 years and then I'll come back later on. It has to be like, if you do that, you're going to really tarnish the trust in your audience and your community. But I do think what NFTs in particular provide is an ability for audiences to be able to be involved and see upside in their favorite creators. Now, I think there's actually one of the things I don't hear talked about a lot in this space is like a lot of the SEC yellow tape around the securitization of assets, whether that be videos, music, and things of that nature. However, I've heard Gary Vee mention, in the early days of YouTube, you'd see people uploading bits and pieces from Saturday Night Live and different TV shows onto YouTube. And there was all this controversy around like, how is this allowed? This is IP infringement. This is all going to get taken down. This platform will get shut off.
And
the rules
do it, yeah.
And the rules had to change really quickly because things were moving too fast. And I don't think we've ever seen things move as fast in terms of technology as Web3. So I do think a lot of these rules around securitization will change. I think when they do, it's going to be like floodgates open in terms of fan participation in the monetary value of the people we follow and admire the most.
I just remember collecting basketball cards as a kid and with Kobe and trying to find Michael Jordan cards and all that stuff. And if, Michael or Kobe back then would have released a, set of 100 NFT specific memorabilia, whatever, like I'll just be all over it. So I mean, you get to see the fans of these different individuals, if there's especially these limited releases, no different than a colorway for Jordans. It's just the digital example of that. So.
Yeah, I also think like one of the main things is like which one of these projects are providing real utility. I think the collectible appeal will wear off rather quickly. The same way that in like the .com era, a lot of the tech companies that didn't come back after the crash were just really based around like, oh, this site is cool because it does this and I can do it on the internet. But like it wasn't fulfilling a need.
Or people that just squatted on every name, like music.com. Like, well, what are you doing there?
Yeah, and there's like a little landing page where you play a little game, do the whole thing. But like Amazon was like real utility. There was like really something there. And that was what allowed it to have staying powers, because like even when the valuation went to freaking nothing, behind the scenes, it didn't matter what the valuation was. Behind the scenes, there's like real business operations going on. And there's an operator behind the scenes that like has a vision. And so which one of these NFT projects has real operators behind the scenes that are actually creating things? Because there's a lot of people in the NFT space who are not operators, they're just marketers.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the thing that's going to get a lot of people caught in particularly bad positions.
And if you think about it, growing up too, you had obviously basketball cards, baseball cards, a lot of like, boys growing up collected that. You had Beanie Babies, Pokemon cards, Pogs, things like that. But there's usually only one thing at a time, right? And when you look at NFTs, there's 9,000 different NFT collections getting released. Like you said, who's going to rise to the top through utility, through creativity, making sure they're launching more and more collectibles so you can stay up to date. But yeah, if you're just trying to do a get rich quick scheme, you're not going to have any staying power.
Yeah. I mean, I think celebrities in general were a lot more like centralized towards a few similar names. The further back you go, the more the biggest names in the world were a smaller list. And I think the more we go into the future, the bigger that list will become. Like I think if you sit in a high school cafeteria right now and you ask 10 random students who are the top 3 celebrities in your world, those 10 students are going to give you all different names.
Not only that, but I think they've polled elementary school kids all across the nation of what they want to be when they grow up, and the number one answer is YouTuber.
Yeah, so, which I mean is kind of leads to why we created Creator Now. Like the demand is there, and whereas when I went to school, everyone wanted to become an athlete or an artist or an actor. Now people want to become YouTubers, in particular YouTubers. And I think right now we didn't see anything in education that taught them the skills to do that. It kind of seems like this, like you stumble upon luck and virality, and then next thing you know, you're a creator. But I really do believe that there are skills that one needs to learn in a particular scaffolded order in order to get there. And then the things that existed in creator education were very much the same, which are like pre-recorded course material videos that you watch on your own time in the isolation of your bedroom. Whereas content creation, I think similar to like sport, is something you have to get out and do, meet other people, collaborate, and actually you have to learn through action. And instead of it coming top down, like someone teaching the curriculum, I think the best learning happens peer to peer, where the person that you're talking to is just slightly a little bit further than you are. And so they help you, and maybe you help someone is in a situation that you were just in a few months ago. And so I think that's the way that the economy levels up altogether.
Yeah, and I think you and I are probably similar, where the way I learned how to cut video was how to cut video on YouTube, how do you upload, how to start a podcast, how to put your podcast on Apple iTunes. I mean, these are just search terms that you self-educate with. That being said, it was going to get here anyway, but I'd love to get your thoughts. Like, I know you really dig deep into this, I guess the psychology of it, but because of COVID and people that were moving back home to Montana with their parents, but paying $75,000 at USC, to do online schooling, where do you think the future is with higher education, traditional education versus the creator courses like you're creating, and just the ability to educate yourself online?
Yeah, it's a great question. And disclaimer, like, I graduated, I have a university degree. And if I can go back in time with the mindset I have now, I probably wouldn't have gone to college. But if I had gone back in time with the mindset I had then, I still probably would have pursued it, because it gave me the network and the foundation that I needed to get to where I am today. But I do think a lot of people, when it comes to like hey, higher education is dead, we need to move on to new innovative forms of education. And obviously, like, Creator Now is very much in that lane.
Right.
I think people write off higher education way too quickly. Like, we go, whoa, this Harvard's not working. Let's look all the way over here into this like new modern version. And I actually think the answer, like, we always tend to overcorrect. Yes. We're like, whoa, no way. And then we land somewhere back in the middle, which is the right answer. And so one of the things I'm trying to be very conscious of with Creator Now is, there's been a ton of research in the process and the curriculum and the format and structure of these institutional educational institutions. And so I think actually starting there and moving slightly back versus swinging the pendulum to the other side is actually the right way to go about things. I think they've really done their research on things like curriculum, on things like class sizes and class structures. And so I think there's actually more to be taken away there than we believe. I think what they haven't been able to do is, like you mentioned, like COVID and remote learning, the engagement of a teacher. Like, I think teachers were not prepared to have to convey things digitally. And a lot of teachers don't have that same charisma or ability to captivate a room on Zoom that they did when it was in person. And I think that education, even like teacher education in particular, is like a huge area that is missing.
Some of the loudest voices are the people that are online, are tweeting, are YouTubers, etc. And I think in our line of work, whether it's social media marketing, social first marketing, digital media, like you said, coding, video editing, yes, absolutely. Like, a lot of us learn by just going online. But if you're an engineer, if you're a doctor, if you're a psychologist, like, sure, there could be ways, I think, online that you can be pretty efficient. But those things, from I think a higher education standpoint, I agree. It's like your network, like you said, learning how to be an adult, all those different things, how to hit a deadline. But also, I took natural disasters, political science, psychology. That's pretty helpful too when I talk to other people of other disciplines and being able to be a full individual. So I think higher education has figured out the general education part, but when it comes to some of these new mediums, and when you get into your, not master's, when you get into your actual bachelor's or whatever you're going to be studying, that's where maybe they fall short.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is that the intersection of pop culture and education, my co-founder, Kate, always says this, is like really the sweet spot. And there are so many students, even pre-pandemic, that were sitting in a classroom on their phone, on Snapchat, on TikTok, on Instagram, just like being more engaged with this creator that they're following than they are with the teacher. And I think we see this even in the rise of alternative education sources like Khan Academy. Someone that's able to be captivating through video content can teach the skills of mathematics in a much more effective manner than a professor that's like drawing on a chalkboard.
And it's like there's good and bad professors, good and bad nurses, good and bad cops, whatever it may be. And I think now that things are moving so fast in the information age, you almost have to change your curriculum or even your daily agenda based on what's happening in the news. I had a professor at San Diego State. He would actually say, hey guys, like, Jeff Zucker resigned from CNN today, which happened on the recording of this podcast. What does that mean for CNN? Like, what can we learn from this? And like actually dive into what the stock is doing. and change his, change his whole curriculum or change that day's course based on what's happening in the news, which I think more professors at the higher education level are going to have to do for sure.
Yeah. And I would hope that what we see is that there's a lot more like action-based learning where, I had an entrepreneurship class in my university that I was very excited to take until I got into the class and I realized that the professor that was teaching entrepreneurship had actually never started a business.
Or the whole way you're graded is on a multiple choice test. It's not how you learn how to be an entrepreneur, So.
Exactly. I mean, actually, luckily the curriculum of the class was a lot better. We came up with a business idea and did the whole thing. But like I was learning from someone who had actually never started a business. So the whole time I was like, how do they know?
Yeah.
And so, you don't want to, So I think like that's a very important thing. And hopefully it's a little bit more like action-based. What is the relevancy of this thing?
Right.
Where education was built at a time where we didn't have the world's information at the touch of our fingers at any moment in time. And so why learn about the information that we need to know when we should actually learn about the application of how to use that information?
I love that.
Tests should be totally like use your phone. I can't believe we do tests where like people can't use their phone because that is like the most ridiculous simulation of what real world is. Like we should be testing people's real life capabilities on a standardized test. When your real life capabilities, you have your phone on you at all times. It's like if I went to a job and they were like, and I was like, hey, what's this silly question? They're like, can't you Google that, Zach? And I was like, well, no phones. Like, I don't think
exactly. Right. No, there's actually a bunch of studies that show that we're starting to forget stuff like who the 25th president of the United States is because that your brain knows you can check that in 6 seconds with Google. So why retain that information? It's like it's somewhere back deep in your brain, but it's not going to recall it quick enough because it doesn't care anymore.
And I think there's probably a lot of people out there that will listen to this and they'll go like, what a shame. Like the world is changing for the worse. Like the good old days are when you memorized everyone's phone numbers off the top of your head. But I don't think they realize that if you can let go of that storage because you have it, you are actually expanding the RAM of your brain so that it can process more information. So you're not thinking about the upside. You're only thinking about like the good old days, which I think is short-sighted.
Awesome. So let's do a quick rapid fire here to get you on your way, man. Outside of the creators that you work with directly, what are some brands or creators that you really enjoy on social media that do a good job?
Nectar Seltzer is doing a great job on TikTok documenting the process of what it was like to start that seltzer company. There's obviously a lot of hard seltzer brands that have popped up in the last 24 months, but I think they've been one of the best. Liquid Death is another CPG D2C brand that I think
talking my love language over here. Big fan.
Yeah, that has nailed
so
marketing.
Great.
Like they, from every word in their copy, know exactly.
Did you see their
target audience?
Their Cincinnati Bengals ad they came out with?
No, I haven't seen that.
I think they put $50,000 if the Bengals win the Super Bowl. Anyway, you have to check it out after the show, but it's pretty brilliant per usual.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was. There's been so much. So I think those are ones, and then I'll give a shout out to for creator economy news and coverage, like Colin and Samir, two really close friends of mine. I think have only leveled up more and more every time I watch their videos in terms of providing creator economy content to people who may not be familiar with the space in a way that is very easily digestible and understandable.
Where do you think the undervalued attention is right now on social? If you're a brand trying to get the best bang for your buck, where are you going?
TikTok, by far, bar none,
Amen.
Hands down. I think the other
is
one
it TikTok and then find a highly coveted TikTok influencer to partner with? Where do you go first, or just
no TikTok micro influencers from 50,000 followers to 250,000 followers? DM them, offer them to get free product and a small cash incentive. Most of them are just going to be happy to get their hands dirty with a brand partnership. And I think if you can get that and be able to find a bunch of those accounts. The hard part is finding a bunch of those accounts. But if you can, I think that's really undervalued.
Yeah, sit down, DM 25 of them, work with 7, and you'll be amazed at the reach you
and I
can
think
get.
I think the other thing is creators. The other really undervalued thing is creators don't want to necessarily put a ton of branded content on their own channels because that feels like selling out.
Yeah.
However, all of these content creators are micro production companies walking around. Most of them could really use an extra couple $100 to buy an extra camera, to buy editing software, and brands don't necessarily recognize that they can sponsor content on their channel, but what's a lot easier for that person to say yes to is actually just providing you content for your channel.
Right. You don't have to live on their channel. They can just create it and it's authentic to your channel. I love that.
Exactly. So you're just treating them like a production company.
What are any tools, resources, apps, analytical tools, anything like that in your line of work that you use daily, weekly to make your life easier?
I am a Notion stan.
Okay.
I use Notion a ton. We work with them on Creator Now. Every member of Creator Now gets a lifetime pro plan on Notion. I use Notion all the time.
And what does Notion do for you? I never heard of it.
Notion is like Google Docs, Evernote, Google Sheets, all in one. And then you can also use just a bunch of different formatting things where like you can create embedded pages within one another. So I can create backlinks and structure stuff. I can keep spreadsheets within written docs in a very clean and organized manner. And then you can publish everything to a web page. So a lot of people actually now are starting to make their web pages Notion based, which is obviously incredibly valuable.
You know, I learn something every single show. I'm gonna have to run and go check it out. I'm surprised I haven't came across it. I love it. Well, cool, man. I would love to hear from you too. Anybody in your network that you think would be a great guest on this show that could provide some value for the kind listeners?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, there is a good friend of mine. His name is Tom Boyd. He runs a channel called Bonus Footage. He's been in video content for a very long time, was one of the first people I think probably picked up a camera and tried vlogging, and is now educating early stage creators in particular on how to get outside of their heads, take action, make content. And I think he has a very interesting perspective on this landscape. I think he has a lot of hot takes, which I know that you appreciate, David.
Yeah, I love the hot takes. Love it, man. Well, Zach, it was amazing. I love how we talked, got super deep on influencers, but also like the change in education and everything in between. So really great conversation, man. And next time I'm up in LA, we'll have to meet up for some lunch or coffee.
Love it. I'll hold you to it. Thanks for having me. And good luck with the rest of the show.
You as well, man. Take care. Adios.
Cheers.
Bye. You know, Will, as I look back about, 45 minutes ago, I tried to warm him up with kind of a softball question. I gave him a deep question. I mean, what would Will Kelly's...
You may have a different... I think a softball is like,
that's
what
not,
did you have for lunch
tacos
today?
or sushi, but I really hit him with... I mean, I would love to know what Will Kelly's number one guest on the Late Night Show with Will Kelly would be. First guest you book.
I think it would be Larry David.
That's a good guess.
I feel like it'd be a good convo. You would definitely get some laughs, and then... I just think Larry, how could you have a bad time talking to that guy?
I might go Jamie Foxx because he's like a comedian, but he can also sing. I mean, you can do a whole like variety show in like 30 minutes, all just with Jamie Foxx. But you can't go wrong with like a Chappelle.
He can sing, he's funny, and he can act.
Or he also too, like this may be like a random one, but like a Jay Farrow, for instance. Like if you could do impressions, everybody loves a solid impression. So
true.
Get an impersonator in there as well. Hey. That was random. We're going off a really weird topic there, but I want to wrap up with Zach because they're at the end too, Will. You and I were just talking about it where that undervalued attention, like, hey, if you don't have a ton of money or you just have product, go to TikTok right now, find influencers, micro, 50 to 250,000, DM every single one of them, work with a few of them. That's great advice and definitely makes total sense with what we really talk about on the show. And then secondly, it's going to be a little harder to ask someone maybe to do something more brand centric to live on their channel so they're not selling out in front of their audience, but it still pay them or ask them to create content for your channel. It doesn't necessarily have to live on the influencer's page. It can live on your page, but probably be the best content you put out all month.
I think that strategy also works for pretty much any brand, right? Like just start with 25 people, find who you want. Like what he said, that's the hard part. But then just kind of get from there, and it's a really low cost to you if you can offer them product or something else other than just pure cash.
And even if you haven't set up a TikTok strategy or even have a TikTok account yet as a brand or up-and-coming brand, you can still utilize the brand awareness with those micro-influencers through product, through giveaways, through whatever it may be. So very, very good stuff there. I'm glad. I really wanted to talk to somebody that works day in day in the creator and influencer space, and that's just what Zach does as founder CEO of One Day Entertainment. So hopefully you got some value out of that. I know I did. And Notion, I'm going to check out Notion, Will. I dropped this in Slack seconds after the podcast here. And Liz and our boy Devin and people are already talking about it. They already used it. I knew nothing about Notion. The all-in-one workplace, notes, tasks, wikis and databases.
I think that was the most like passionate a guest has ever been about of like an app.
I know.
review.
He was all about
Yeah,
it.
good sell job.
We are not sponsored by Notion, but we're talking all about it here on the pod. So maybe Notion will hit us up for a little brand deal ourselves. All right. So thank you, as always, to David Furker. Thanks to producer Will. Will Kelly going on a beautiful vacation, going to be 85 and sunny each and every day. Hope you have the best time out there in Virginia. I hear the weather's great out there these days.
Should be a cool 25 and sunny on wedding day.
Bring your San Diego Parka with you. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Business of Social podcast. My name is David Brickley, and it's all been powered by STN Digital.